Hello and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 162, and we're going to talk about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and the Metroid franchise as a whole today. And this will be the last episode before them awards that I do, and I'm squeezing it in literally right beforehand so we can have this last game sneak in as part of all of the 2025 stuff. First, though, I've got some pickups to share that I've acquired over the last couple weeks, so let's go ahead and recap all of those. Fangamer released a whole bunch of new Ace Attorney merch. I'm wearing one, which is this really sick Emma Sky shirt. I love how much it leans into forensics. I think it's fantastic. I also got this sweater of the famous case at the end of the first game that's all about Christmas. And I think this is a great Christmas sweater motif. Very excited about it. And they weren't quite done because they also released an ornament, the Almost Christmas ornament, which is great. And then on the back side, it says, "Almost Christmas means it wasn't Christmas," which is just a wonderful thing to have on the back of this. I need to find a home for it. You can see there's some holiday decor up behind me. Last but not least for this piece, I got the Rosalina storybook that I think is really lovely. I'll give you a sample page on the inside. Really great to see this in physical form. It'll be displayed behind me. Alright, the pickups continue with a game I've been waiting for 8 years. This is the Switch 1 version. I bought it when Best Buy still had its Gamers Club. So it was 20% off still, which is very nice of them to still honor 8 years later. I also got the Silux amiibo, and I've been playing the game, been enjoying it a lot. I don't fully understand why the reviews have been so mixed about it, honestly. At this present moment, it's the second best Metroid Prime game, in my opinion, behind the first. So we'll see if the end just absolutely fumbles, but as of right now, I'm really happy with it. I also got the Silux amiibo. Totally forgot to record something about that, but there he is back there. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Announced back in 2017 and finally coming out in 2025. Very troubled development history. Was originally being developed by Bandai Namco Singapore. After 3 years or so, the project was removed from their hands and given back to Retro Studios, who stopped whatever they were working on and worked on this for a long time. The game, now that I've finished it, and I got 100% items, 100% scans, 100% green crystals, beat it on casual mode, getting all the way through, I feel that it is a great Prime game with some really unnecessary additions tacked on that take away a bit of its overall impact and enjoyment, but not enough for me to think it was terrible or bad. I quite enjoyed it, to be completely honest with you. I think it's a B caliber game, and considering that the last game in the Prime subseries that I played, which was Corruption, was like a F, I'll take a B grade game. So let's talk about what I think worked well. And what I think worked well is the Prime stuff. The moment-to-moment first-person action-adventure dynamic that had been established with the original Metroid Prime is here, and it works really well still. I really enjoy the scan / combat dynamic that Retro has established with this series. And the game feels great to control. The game looks phenomenal. It's got a really great soundtrack. Compared to Metroid Dread, it soars in just about every way on that front. The combat feels really good. I think that they've used the Switch 2 controller really well, and I think that the biomes that they created, for the most part, are solid. Maybe not as open exploratory as an earlier Prime, but I think that the environments are great. The fact that all 5 of them kind of have their own thing going on, I think is really nice. The enemies are not like universal across them all, but there is a common thread, which I'll get to when we get to the story stuff, which I'll spoiler ahead of time. They're not super outside the norm. Like there's a jungle one and a fire one and a volcano and an ice place. So in a sense, that's very Prime-like in terms of how the biomes are formatted, but they are distinct enough, and I think that the way that the game sets up things, for the most part, while you're actively there, is fantastic. Boss fights are also really good. Save maybe the last one. The last one, I won't disagree with the consensus that is disappointing, but I'll talk about story stuff momentarily. So a lot of positive. This feels like a great evolution of the Prime gameplay format. Where does it falter? It falters in the new stakes that they decided to put in the middle of all these biomes, which is the Soul Valley desert area. I actually don't hate it, but I do think it's the weak point of the game, and it's primarily because it is a gigantic, vast map. You need a bike to traverse, and there's not a whole lot of evolution with that space. So there's also not a lot of things to go track down in that space in terms of like picking up power-ups. Primarily what you'll be doing is you'll deal with about 3 to 5 different enemy types through the whole sequence. You'll track down the hidden objects that you'll eventually need to pick up. There's some parts, without getting into specifics, and green crystal. Both of those are essential to get all the goodies in the game. The parts are story driven, so I'll get up to those in a minute. Green crystal was probably the biggest mistake of the entire enterprise. So, in this game, you are on a planet that has gone through an environmental collapse, and its population has all but died. And you discover that in the midst of this population trying to save themselves, they came across a rock formation that they refer to as green crystal that they harvested and then attempted to use to save their planet. The problem is that outside of lore, this becomes an essential thing to acquire to get the best suit in the game, as well as some unlockables. So you will spend a fair amount of time driving around a desert with likely very little music, unless you happen to have bought an amiibo that unlocks tracks for the bike section. Only 2 until you beat the game. Both from the same biome, no less, which just really makes it feel half-assed. And try to skid your bike into green crystal fragments that are just everywhere, that also continue to show up as the game evolves. So you can knock all this out. Like, you can just say, okay, beginning of the game, I'm supposed to get green crystal. Let me go get them all. Well, you beat the next biome. Guess what? There's more green crystal all over the place. It has 3 trigger points throughout the whole game. So you really should wait to get it all, because you won't get near the, not even 100% to get the best suit, which is what the ultimate reward is, as well as a couple other upgrades. It's a drag. It's a drag to constantly be like driving around. Oh, green crystal, let me go hit it. Because there's a lot of it. There's an excessively enormous amount of green crystal scattered about by the time the game ends. And you need to hunt down every last bit of it to get some unlockables. It doesn't actually get you anything in the game to get 100%. Beyond a nice little thing telling you 100%. But the game also wants you to go do that for whatever reason. It's like, you get the good suit, you get the cool suit. It's like, you should go get some more. Oh, I'm like, okay, what else could be beyond this suit? Screw attack, maybe, since we're locking really obtuse things behind a very half-baked mechanic? No, it's just unlockables for the end of the game. No other reason. And that's kind of crappy, honestly. Along with that, let's talk about the other bugbear that is related to this gigantic desert, and that is an essential backbone of the Metroid franchise, and that's backtracking. So the desert, let's just say the desert is like this big space, and like where my grease badge is a biome. Okay, so let's say that that's the main biome where you end up having to go back a lot for green crystal drop-offs, checking in with story people. I'll just say story people for now. So on and so forth. There's a lot to go back to that section for. So, but this area is huge. So like the next area, let's say, is this lid. It's down here. So you have to bike from where my grease pin is all the way down to here. And then if you have to go back, you have to go all the way back up to here. And all 5 biomes are far apart from each other. So there's a lot of instances where you have to go back to Fury Green, which is the jungle area where you start, where you have the green crystal drop-offs and the story people and other things that are critical for you to progress and earn stuff. And it's clunky. There's no fast travel. You can't just go, oh, I need to leave Fury Storm and get back to, or Forge Storm, or whatever the second place is called. Volt Forge, that's what it's called. I need to leave Vault Forge because I have to go back and get something from Story Guy. Well, I have to leave the zone, which there's not really a convenient way to just leave an area. I have to then drive all the way over to Fury Green, enter Fury Green, go to a bullet shortcut system that has an incredibly long load time to get to the other side of Fury Green, which is closer to the base where the story guy is. You talk to the story guy, you get the thing you need, you literally have to go back to the same place that you just were, redo that long load, because it makes more sense to do that than to go out the normal way. It's a lot of backtracking. Go through that load, exit the area, ride your bike back. It's way too complicated and convoluted to do that over and over and over again, and the game demands it. The game demands it a lot. It's frustrating, and it's really the biggest downfall of Beyond, knocking it to a B for me. The green crystal is annoying, but it's kind of brainless. That's the thing that got me, was the backtracking, because when it comes to Metroid games, if it's doable, I'm looking at U0 mission. If it's doable without getting frustrating, I will get 100% of the items in a Metroid game. I've done it with Metroid, Metroid 2, Super Metroid, Prime. I think I did it with... I haven't done it with Echoes because I think I missed like a scan on a boss or something. I did it with Dread. I've done it with Beyond. But it was probably the most annoying to get 100% items and scans and everything with Beyond because of the backtracking. And it's really unfortunate, because I think if that was not so locked into I gotta ride a bike to get anywhere, it would have been a better game. So I think Samus's psychic abilities work pretty well. The control beam is mandatory for a few puzzles, but not much else, honestly. They give her psychic boots so she could interact with psychic objects. The psychic lasso to be able to pull shields off of things and open up hatches. That feels pretty good. No real issues with the new abilities. It is hilarious to me that we have thunder, fire, and ice shots when Prime 1 had wave, ice, and plasma beams that are essentially the same thing. But because it's a different culture, we have to change what they are to a different type of thing and give them ammo. Thankfully, unlike with Echoes, the ammo is less of a hassle here. You get a lot more of it, and it's all centralized, so you don't have light, dark ammo that you're trying to balance all the time. And it's a little less important, because Echoes had you using the light beam, for example, to create areas where you could stand and safely, like, investigate an area. Because the dark would eat away at your armor until you got the right suit. They don't do that in Beyond, and I'm very thankful for that. The shot system is ultimately a better evolution of what Echoes had. And I will say that while there are some particular bosses that you have to hit certain areas, the dual stick system with aiming works, so it's not frustrating. I never got mad at a boss because I couldn't get their weak point fast enough like I did with Corruption. So I think all of that stuff works out just fine, and the psychic abilities, and I think the lore and everything in this game is really fascinating. It's really just that they put a hub world in that they probably didn't need to put in. They probably should have just had the base be in the middle, and you sit outside the tower, and the biomes are not that far apart, and then you just walk everywhere. As cool as the bike is, and as great as the bike feels to control, it really feels unnecessary. It feels a little antithetical to what Metroid is. Alright, we are now officially at the spoiler section. So if you don't want to be spoiled, let's skip ahead to where my hand is. There's going to be a text box that's going to pop up to say, skip to that. So, if you don't want to have any of the story stuff discussed, now's a great time to either skip ahead or just jump out. So, whatever works for you. We'll put a little picture of Samus up as a temporary block as the final call, and then once that disappears, we're going to get into story stuff. Beyond has a really interesting story, I feel, in that it's kind of a bit like what Echoes told, but with some different twists to it. So Samus ends up being called to help a Galactic Federation base that is getting attacked by Psylux, who was in Metroid Prime Hunters, showed up as a cameo at the end of Prime 3 Corruption and Federation Force, and is finally getting his game. Finally getting his time in the sun. And what he brings to the table is that he has taken over the space pirates from Ridley, I presume, who is, I guess, dead at this point, or at least being resuscitated for Super Metroid, or Metroid Samus Returns. I lose track of where Prime falls. I think it's between Metroid and Metroid 2. I genuinely cannot remember. Anyway, whatever's going on with Ridley, he's not there. So Sylux has stepped in to take over the space pirates. And he has been working with Metroids to have them suddenly have the ability to take over a host as a parasite, similar to the X. The X are not mentioned in this. But basically, Sylux has like 6, 7, 8 something Metroids that are empowering the bosses in this game to be harder and more challenging. When Samus and Sylux see each other, they have a brief battle, and a wild shot hits an artifact that the Galactic Federation was transporting. By hitting this artifact, it whisks everyone away that we have in the game. Samus, Sylux, and 5 Galactic Federation soldiers. Those are our main characters. And the game basically has Samus going through, encountering the civilization on this planet that they're on Vuros. I think they're the Lumor, if my memory is correct. A species that had lived on this planet, but had technologically run its course, did something that doomed its population, and basically died of old age. So there's no one remaining of the Lumor. Samus, through the process of the game, discovers more about the fate of the Lumor, as well as finding the Galactic Federation soldiers that got scattered throughout Vuros. Much has been said about Miles McKenzie, the first one you meet, that he's quippy, he's a Marvel character trapped in a Metroid game, which, yeah, I could see that. I don't think he's a problem outside of this game's tendency to over-tutorialize. And I can understand to some extent why Retro decided to go a little heavy on tutorials, because this is very likely some people's first Metroid game. And I feel that they were trying to be kind and not just dump people onto this planet, and giving them an actual avatar instead of just Samus's visor clicking on saying, hey, you should go there. It backfires a little bit because I've read that McKenzie does accidentally lead you to areas you can't go to yet because you don't have the right ability to get past the entry point. That could be frustrating. That didn't happen to me, but that could be frustrating. I ended up wanting to explore a little bit and found that I couldn't do that, but I was not told to go there. That I remember, at the very least. You will then find a sniper in the ice area, and then a sergeant and a lieutenant in the volcano, and a mech guy later in the game. And they all basically interact with Samus during parts of the game, and while it is a little bit escort questy, in these sequences, at least on casual. It wasn't really a problem. I didn't lose anyone, so to speak. And I didn't think that they were problematic, really. It was actually kind of nice. Samus still doesn't say anything. Samus's personality in this game is actually kind of like Dread's, where she's just very stoic and kind of badass in a lot of her reactions to things. But she doesn't say a word outside of grunts when she gets hit through the whole game. So it is a little awkward because the characters are talking to her and she's just like staring at them. So I am officially adopting Samus into the extreme introvert club, where I like to be sometimes, where I just don't want to be around other people and don't want to talk. So sometimes I just don't. So I am okay with that characterization choice. It's a lot better than having her talk and breaking years and years and years of established lore and canonizing to have her talk and basically character assassinate herself. Looking at other M. I didn't find the soldiers a problem. In fact, I actually kind of liked them. And it did give the game a little bit more of a connected feel than perhaps past games where Samus is all by herself. But I feel like they've done that so much that it doesn't hurt once in a while to try something. And when we look at the history of adding in another voice into the Metroid series, this is, I think, the most successful. Because Fusion, I don't like Adam, the narrator or the navigator robot guy telling you where to go all the time. Corruption, I didn't enjoy for multiple reasons. Other M is notorious for really messing that up. And now Beyond, I think, actually created characters that are voice acted well. Their dialogue isn't atrociously written. And I think that Samus has established enough of her legend, even by the point of being between Metroid and Metroid 2, that people would know who she is, that she has a reputation. And so people would know about her, and some people would fangirl over her. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's a problem, so to speak. The problem with the new characters is our antagonist. It's Sylux. He doesn't get enough development in this game to really feel like anything more than an empty threat. He shows up at the beginning, and then when you're on Vuros, you fight holograms of him, but he's just not there. He's just not a part of this game. Samus has a couple psychic breakdowns, for lack of a better term, that she gets flashbacks of a moment in her life, and it's actually Sylux that she's reading the memories of, but they're so disjointed that you don't really realize that's what's happening, because she's also in them. So, turns out that he's been locked up inside Soul Valley in the Chrono Tower, or whatever they call the final area. The whole game, he's just been locked in a pod. The whole game. Sending out all these cybernetic things at you, but just not really being a villain. Not establishing anything to make you feel much of anything about him. And it's like he has this big beef with Samus, but why? You don't even get that really in the main game. You unlock that with either 100% item completion or an amiibo unlock with the Sylux amiibo. And it's like, basically, he was a Galactic Federation soldier before becoming a space pirate. He went on a mission with a big team. His team was wiped out. Samus showed up too late, but managed to knock off the threat before it killed him. And he takes all of that out on her, that she didn't get there in time to save everyone that he cared about. That is a decent antagonist backstory, but it's just really not in the game proper for you to understand it. You don't really get that until like he comes out of the pod and Samus gets her last flashback. And that's really disjointed. It's not the full clip, and you still don't really know like that's him at first. So Sylux is a waste of an opportunity to introduce a new villain into the canon of Metroid. He's also the type of villain that you don't know why he's so powerful. Like Ridley, I think, has, over the history of the series, established why he's such a threat, because he just keeps coming back, but there's reasons for it. It's justified in the lore. It makes sense in the game itself. The only time that really didn't make sense was maybe Metroid Samus Returns, because why was Ridley back in that game before Super Metroid? I think everything else, it kind of makes sense for where Ridley ultimately comes into the story. But with Sylux, he had hunters that didn't really have a lot of plot. And then those two little cameos that I mentioned. And then here he is in this game, supposed to be on a scale of Mother Brain and Ridley and Dark Samus. It just doesn't get there. Doesn't land that leap. The fight with him is fine, but it's a 3-parter, and there's a possibility you won't get 100% scans if he decides not to go into his specialized morph ball mode, which is Lockjaw. The first time I fought Sylux in the final battle, he didn't turn into Lockjaw. So I never was like, well, I'm looking for Lockjaw. I hadn't played Hunters enough to know that Lockjaw was his morph ball. So I was like, what's the scan that I need? What's the scan that I need? I'm not seeing it. It just says Sylux all the time. So that was a little frustrating, because then I had to redo the whole fight. And then I had to redo it again because he stole one of my E-tanks and absorbed it. And I lost it. It went from 100% item completion down to 99%. And that pissed me off. So I think that an antagonist that steals your items that are so central to getting the full satisfaction of a Metroid is some bullshit. Did not like that idea. And that kind of dampened the fight already with a character that I don't fully understand what his beef is with my character. And just needed more fleshing out. Remember all those Metroids that I was just talking about? They aren't mentioned again, by the way. They're just in the bosses. They just end up in the 5 bosses. Somehow. They're in there. No explanation. Sylux isn't around. He's in a pod. How did they get the Metroids to them? Was he sending out his holograms out to say, hey, I'm in a pod. Put these guys inside the guardians of these spaces so that way when Samus gets there, it's harder for her. Okay, cool. Cool beans. And then this whole offshoot of Metroid manipulation disappears. Never to be seen again. In the rest of the series. It's a little baffling. So on the whole, I think that the story itself is pretty good. I think that the soldiers add a nice little layer. Sylux is the weak point, and he's unfortunately the villain. So when you combine kind of a weak villain with half-baked hub world backtracking annoyances and a collectathon that isn't necessary in Metroid, please don't do that. It brings Beyond down. I don't think it's into like C range. I don't think it's a D range. I don't think it's an F range. I think it's a B range game. And after Corruption being so disappointing to me. It was nice to play a first-person shooter that I actually like the way it feels and controls. Just like Prime. It's just like Prime in that way. And it made me happy. So now we switch to the second half of this video. We've talked extensively about Beyond and where I feel it might fall on a overall list of my game preferences. What worked, what didn't. Let's now talk about the entire Metroid franchise briefly, so this video is not excessively long. I've already done the Mario franchise, so this is the second of these that I can recollect doing. And I put them in order of chronological release, barring remakes and remasters. So that's why Zero Mission's behind Metroid, and Samus Returns is behind Return to Samus, and Prime Remastered is behind Prime. I have played 13 of the games in the series. That leaves out Metroid Other M, because why? Federation Force, Metroid Prime Pinball, Blast Ball, or whatever the thing was for 3DSware, and maybe one other one, maybe. That's not a major Metroid game, but I have played the majority of the important ones. So, how is this going to work? Well, I'm going to just quickly go through and set this up in an order that I think is my preference from top to bottom, and then we'll just maybe do a sentence or two on each game real fast on why it's where it is. All right, this is what I would rank the games at as of December 2025. Beyond may fall below Metroid 2 Return to Samus. I don't think it would fall below Echoes, though, because I do think that it is a better game than Echoes. But for right now, I do feel that where everything is where I feel it should be. And 4 of these are in my top 110 list. Super Metroid through Zero Mission. So let's start at the bottom and we'll work up just real quick. Again, I don't want to take excessively long because this has already got like a half hour of me talking about Beyond. I don't want this to run into an hour long video. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption is my least favorite Metroid game. I hate motion controls. This is one of the reasons why I hate motion controls. I did not enjoy playing anything in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption because it was so stuck in motion controls that I did not enjoy. Metroid Prime Hunters, the DS for left-handed people and touchscreen controls for actual movement sucks ass. Metroid Prime is only down this low because Metroid Prime Remastered exists and is, in my opinion, the best version of that game. So I kind of just dumped it in the bottom part of this ranking because I think that there's a better way to play it. Metroid Samus Returns is a adequate remake of Metroid 2, but loses a lot of the atmosphere. The enemy respawn rate is atrocious. And it really relies on the counter to be able to get through anything quickly. It kind of missed the point of what Metroid 2 was about. Metroid Fusion, I think, is a fine game. I think its save points are too infrequent, its boss fights are too challenging, and Samus takes too much damage, and fuck Adam. Metroid, the original. I still enjoy this game quite a bit. I think that it's very difficult to play without a map or an FAQ because so much of the environments look the same. But I think it's one of the early defining soundtracks of the NES. Samus turned out to be such a cool character that I adore to death. And it just really set up a lot of what would be made into the greatest game of all time in Super Metroid. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Its biggest fault is its reliance on ammo. I mentioned this with Beyond that beyond improved the ammo idea. Echoes relies on it too much for you to be able to progress or actually not take damage. And it's frustrating in that way. It's also extremely hard. It's probably, out of all the games on this list, the hardest one outside of Dread. And unlike Dread, the replayability of having to do bosses and all that over again is not as fun. But I do think it is a solid follow-up to the first Metroid Prime. It's just not as good. Metroid 2, Return of Samus has wonderful atmosphere, a really moody sense of dread. And I think it's one of the few Game Boy games that actually uses large sprites effectively. It controls well. It's very distinct from the rest of the series. And I think that it is important because it establishes Samus's Varia suit with the bulky shoulders and everything. I think it's a very important game and one of the better Game Boy games overall. Beyond, which we just talked about a lot. If it didn't have all the backtracking faults in the gigantic hub world and the Green Crystal Collectathon and a very, very weak villain, I think it would be higher than Zero Mission. But regrettably, it has all those things holding it back. But I did have a really great time playing it. I am so happy to play a first-person shooter that I actually really got into. It's been such a long time. Metroid Zero Mission. A really great remake of the original game. I like the stealth section they added at the end. The only big issues I have with Zero Mission is, honestly, they retconned Kraid to be giant all the time, and I think that's a bad call because it kind of ruins what Super Metroid established as a fake-out. And it relies way too much on shine sparking to get all of the power-ups. I hate shine sparking when it is used in excess. Dread, I think, managed to thread that needle just right for me. Zero Mission crossed it. Metroid Prime Remastered. What a technical showcase for the Nintendo Switch. Beautiful remake. Absolutely stunning. Controls better than the original game. Looks phenomenal. The soundtrack is still wonderful. The definitive way to play Metroid Prime, and it's still the best 3D Metroid game. Metroid Dread. Exceptional take on the series. Moves the series forward in some really awesome ways. I like the Emmys. I think that they are an effective way of adding a little bit of terror into the series. Samus looks cool in her new armor. I think she controls the best in the entire series in Dread. The boss fights are challenging, but in a way that they're like puzzles, trying to figure out the best way to deal damage and not take it. And outside of an absolutely weak Saw soundtrack and the level design and environments not being as compelling as some other games, I think Dread is easily the second best Metroid. Just on nailing how I envision Samus as a character so effectively. It's really great. Super Metroid is my favorite game of all time. I could go on for a very long time. I'll just say that in just about every aspect of the game, it is perfect, in my opinion. Wall jumps kind of suck, and that's really the worst thing I could say about Super Metroid. Otherwise, it is an impeccably designed game from start to finish, with nearly every aspect of it just finely tuned to make me overjoyed. Alright, that concludes all the Metroid chat. There was a lot. But before we go, last late breaking news. Femtendo 1987 Part 1, my newest book, is available now. There'll be a link in the description if you're interested. I've been working on this practically since I finished the last one. It's just taken a long time, but it's finally been released as a Part 1. Part 2 will come about late 26, early 27, I think. Here's all the characters that we are discussing in the book. It's a pretty solid lineup of a few well-known characters, quite a few obscure characters, at least for American and European audiences. There's a feature on Zelda and all of her appearances throughout the series, and just a sample page of one of the entries that I happen to really just like the aesthetic of this particular page. Very excited to have this done. I hope that you might be interested and check it out. A lot of the support that I get on my various projects goes into research for Femtendo, so I am just beyond thankful for all of my Patreons and everyone else who has assisted me with getting this book out the door. All right, so with that, we will call this an episode. You'll see me soon for the awards that I do 2025. Until then, friends, please take care.